All right, let me see if I can share my screen real quick. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Babur. Looks good? Okay, great. Hey, I'm Babur, adjunct professor, Doctor of Science, student cybersecurity. I'm also a researcher. I do a lot of volunteer work. So today's presentation is deep on the dark web. So we have a standard agenda here. Introductions we will do in a second, which Warren is going to talk. He's the expert on this domain with over 20 years experience, navigating deep and dark web and manage attribute networks, which he's going to tell you about. We'll go through some basic definitions, show you some sample sites, and then do a small demo. So I'm not planning on engaging anyone on the deep and dark web, but I would like to show, some capabilities that exist out there. Okay, that's me again. I just told you a little bit about me. Warren?
Yes. So my name's Warren Holston. I spent 20 plus years in CIA, mostly doing targeting and manhunting. And then I was a program manager at US SOCOM and back in the early 2000s, standing up their manhunting program. And so part of the way I look at the world is from the perspective of the hunter and looking at how tradecraft can protect an individual from being hunted. And the hunter can be a foreign intelligence service. It can be a hacker that's trying to steal PII. It can be law enforcement. It doesn't matter. They're all exploiting the same vulnerabilities to collect certain information to do something with it. So I look at it more from the behavioral aspects, and this is kind of how we're going to talk a little bit about the deep and dark web, rather than from the pure technical aspects of routers and servers and IP addresses and that sort of thing. So look forward to talking with everyone. Barbara?
Great. So, as you can see, Warren is also author. He has published a book on personal security tradecraft. Both of us have co-created a few courses at a local, at Nova Community College where I teach. I also teach at some other universities. We have created courses there. They're first of its kind. So these are the foundations for secure human behavior. So everything starts in your personal life, and then you take that, to your work life and social life and so on. So a few definitions, surface web, deep in the dark. So this is a nice drawing that I pulled off of Google a few days ago when we were putting together this slide. The surface web is your everyday use internet. So Google, Wikipedia, Bing, Yahoo, or some other search engines that are available for the most people. So that's about 4% of the overall internet or the web that people use. Deep web is anything that's gated. So, for example, if you go to your bank account, bankofamerica.com, the landing page comes up. That's the home page. So that's considered surface web since it's publicly available data information. As soon as you put in your credentials, that's your username and password, and log onto your account, anything behind that username and password is considered deep web. For students, I saw some students that are on the call. Another example would be Blackboard or Canvas, right? You go to your school's Blackboard site. Um, what you see on the homepage is surface web, and as soon as you log on to look at your classes, your grades, and so on, that's considered deep web as well. And then lastly, the dark web here. So that's a subset of deep web. Similar to deep, but then you need a special software or hardware to get to it. And during the demo, we will walk you through a few of this.
So
Warren,
one thing,
anything?
yeah, one thing to add. So from the perspective of anonymity, because we're going to talk throughout this discussion about the dark web being used for illicit activity, but it's also, for example, Tor was not created to to run illicit sites. It was actually created to protect the anonymity of people in environments where their civil rights might be in jeopardy. For example, pick a country, Iran, that typically shuts down the internet. Um, the dark web is used a lot of times by um, those that are oppressed to be able to communicate through the special software and through the special networks. But at the same time, as we go through this, you have to look at it from the perspective of the way people hunt other people is finding poor behavior um, from an individual between the dark web and the surface web. So if you are on a private network communicating and you use the same type of language or the same handles or the same names, then it can easily be extracted to the service web and then find all of your other personal accounts. And that's how your anonymity is broken. It's whether you're using it because you're oppressed and you're trying to communicate, or whether you're a bad guy trying to sell something illicit on the dark web. That's how the anonymity is broken.
That's a great point. So I can piggyback off of that. So in terms of academia, that's what I do most of. So we don't do, as an academic community, we don't do good enough job yet to start from the threats that are out there, and specifically the cybersecurity. I'm a cyber teacher, I'm a cyber student, and that's what I do for my day job as well. So, think about like what if we started off from looking at the threat landscape, looking at the deep and the dark web. Even though it's called the dark web, deep web, most of the information is not bad out there. But if that's the first thing that we teach to our students, imagine how much better our curriculum would be. So here are some sample markets. So when I'm doing research, I always start from the surface web and then let my findings, lead me to the other corners of the web without me forcing or going directly to to a certain part, deep or the dark. So going through, I came across this nicely put together chart from deep.web.com, which is a surface web. You can go to it. So click on the charts, and this is a sample of different markets that are there: Dream Market, Wall Street Market, and so on. This is just to give you a perspective that even though those web has different parts, whether gated or you need special software, most of it, if you know what you're looking for, you can start from the surface and then go on to other aspects.
I'm good. So, excuse me, managing the attribution. So the dark web is really only a managed attribution network. So think about it in terms of if I have peer-to-peer communications, that's a managed network because I know and I can assure that no one's in the middle. So the dark web is simply the various entries into it, and there are a number, um, is simply managed networks. The government, Tor was originally created out of the government. Um, the government uses managed networks. Virtually every intelligence agency uses managed networks to protect the data that they're transmitting. And by doing that, you may have an Amazon cloud server where um, where you are communicating through the server to another entity somewhere around the world, and that's your host. But you also have special software on either end that by authenticating into the software, you can then communicate privately. And what we know that in the public domain is a VPN, because you're using a server or servers to communicate over the internet that you don't have control over. So you have the special software or the VPN on either end that creates the encrypted tunnel so you can communicate and hide your IP address. Well, the dark web is essentially the same thing, using specialized software to ensure that the servers that you communicate through, the IP addresses that you communicate through, rotate. So you can place the server in Bulgaria if you want to, so it looks like you're communicating from there, to manage your attribution and manage the encryption. So fundamentally, people talk about the dark web. The dark web isn't a place. It's just it's a series of managed internets or networks that control the attribution. You can use virtual private networks, virtual machines. You can hop through multiple providers, Rackspace, Amazon, Microsoft, and the more IP hops you set up in your managed network, the more complicated it becomes to find the actual source of the information. And a lot of people, we'll talk about Tor in a few minutes, but everyone's heard that Tor has been broken. Um, Tor was never broken. Tor was the servers that the information hops through, which is basically someone's desktop computer or laptop, um, is broken because of bad behavior, and then they start tracing back through through the networks to find the source.
Awesome. So I can touch on some of the non-technical side of it. You brought up behavior. So everything again starts with secure behavior, right? The way that you do things will give you a certain outcome. Critical thinking is another aspect. So just even if you're just surfing the surface web for research or anything really, everyday life, think through what are you going to do? Have a plan of action. What if you go to, say, Amazon.com or Walmart or somewhere else and click on an icon? Those are reputable sites. But what if at that time that you're browsing, that happens to be malicious, button on the site? What's your plan? What are you going to do with that? So most of this is during preparation. It's really the human behavior and making sure that security is part of that. Whether you're going through VPNs, and I will show you how my network is managed with my virtual machine and multiple VPNs in a second. And critical thinking, really, think about it from various perspective that so whoever's that's looking for you, or if you feel that you're compromised, you have a plan to backtrack and clean up best that you can so that they are not able to, they as in the adversary, be able to come to your actual IP address. So here are some things that you can find on the deep in the dark side of the web, which is everyday use items. So you can imagine you go to Google if you want to, buy, candy, gum, or anything, any household items, you can find it there. A lot of tons of PII. And in a second, Warren and I will tell you stories. When we were putting together the slides, we were, thinking about it. Do we want to, take a screenshot of this and put it out there because that's like real people's information? And during story we'll tell you that corporate secrets, so this is intellectual property, you come across a lot of those, whether it was hacked, whether it was insider, since dark web is meant for anonymity. Most people, the adversary, when they get that, they try to sell it on that side of the network. Cyber weapons, so malicious code, right? Zero-day attacks. Zero-day attacks are those vulnerabilities that does not have a fix for it. However, if someone has that capability, you can possibly find that there as well. Hackers for hire, top secret communication. Again, people want to be anonymous or pseudo-anonymous on the web, especially in some of the countries around the world. Not everyone has the freedom that we have, whether you're Saudi, Iran, or North Korea, or some other countries, Russia, China. Most of the internet is blocked, so they have censorship there. However, if you have the VPNs, if you have managed attribute networks and know what you're doing along with secure behavior, you can still be able to communicate. Weapons, I think Warren has a story about that when I get to that screenshot. And a lot of drugs, you name it, whether legal or illegal, you find a lot of those. So these are just a sample. There's hundreds of other things that we could have put here. Again, we're scratching the surface just to give you a perspective on what you can get.
So just to add to that, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, the Russians, or not the Russians, but somebody from that side of the world dumped about 500,000 pages of Russian top secret information into a chat room on the dark web. Um, so it goes on both sides that this information is out there. There is a chat room actually it's an FTP site and on Tor, an Onion site that has every document that is in WikiLeaks, every document that was leaked by WikiLeaks that they have made searchable, um, so you can actually look for something in the documents now. So all of these things get dumped out there. The problem is you have to know where to look, where you have to know where to start looking to find it.
So this is where we're gonna talk through. So most people, as Warren mentioned earlier, when people say dark web, they're like, "Oh, Tor," and that's where most conversations start. They don't really talk about how it works or have I been there, have I used it. There are a lot of people, especially in academia, they use the Tor browser for everyday work as well, which is good. But then as soon as you log onto your account, you're giving up your identity, right? It's meant for anonymity, for research purposes, and so on. But it's okay to use for everyday purposes. Just understand that, as soon as you go to Tor, it hops through multiple hops, and I'll show you what that looks like. Multiple people's computer before you get to the site that you're trying to get to. But as soon as you log on to your Gmail, Facebook, Blackboard, or your work account, your identity is exposed. So Freenet is one of those sites, other than Tor. So this is peer-to-peer networking. And what happens is once you install the software, you have to allocate part of your hard drive that's on your desktop or laptop or server to be part of a node on the Freenet network.
I'm good.
So going to Tor. So this is the widely used because there are a lot of different Tor sites. And it's the easiest one as well based on my experience. It's just a browser that the pre-configured browser that you install. And as long as you have the right URLs, which are .onion URLs, you should be able to get to those sites. And we will show you in a few seconds what that looks like. And there's also Invisible Internet Project. This is another cool one. This is more peer-to-peer as well. Works similar to Freenet. So you get the software, you install it, and you configure your bandwidth, and it gives you a nice put-together dashboard for different type of information. So when I show you this on my browser during the demo, you can see what kind of information is available. Again, the intent is not to click on anything today. But we would like to show you what the capabilities are. There's one other, which is called ZeroNet. I forgot to put those on the slide here. So ZeroNet is another one, right? Another peer-to-peer managed attribute network that you can use. That's widely available as well. Probably in terms of simplicity, that's the most difficult one to get it installed and configure because you need some computer skills, you need secure behavior, you need, just maybe some development skills to get that going.
So just a couple of things on this, Barbara. On all of
Yeah.
these different portals, if you will, into managed networks, um, there are things to consider. There are always rules. And going back to what I said in the beginning, and if you break the rules, that's how you're compromised. Each of the sites have fact sheets on how to use the tools, uh, what you can do when you're within the tool, whether you should download something if you're using, say, Tor for research, and you decide to download a document, you then open your computer up to malware. So there's a series of rules if you decide to use this, kind of like Barbara was talking about, where if you go to Tor, if you go through Tor and then try to access your Gmail account, what you've done is you've compromised or you've associated yourself with the IP address that you're coming out of. It doesn't matter if it's Denmark. What matters is that that is now a known Tor site and someone's actual computer that's being used. So you've been associated with a server within the Tor site, Tor network. And once people start mapping that out, then you can start tracing the network, and that's how people get caught. Um, the other thing to know about this is all of these sites, because they're using proxy servers going from site to site before you exit the final IP. Many of the larger companies now, service providers like Google, Facebook, they'll challenge you when you use some anonymizer like Tor, because they recognize it as a proxy coming out of some random place in the world, and they'll challenge you for authentication, send you a text message or some two-factor authentication. And the other problem with Tor, or all of these, is every time you log in, say you do use it to go to your Google account, they're going to challenge you because every time you come back online, you're using a different endpoint IP address.
Great. So how about we show them a few of these sites and then tell a story, and then we'll show them how it can do, all of this can be automated. I'm not sure. I'll just leave it there. So what I'm going to show you right now is we talked about some of these capabilities. This is a virtual machine that I have. So going back, managing your attribution, secure behavior. Obviously, we prepped for this, and this is my manage attribute. So this is my desktop on my laptop, and I have VPN running, which is NordVPN, which is this thing right here. And then from that, I have a virtual machine, which is a VMware workstation. I'm just going to expand this. And on this virtual machine, this is just like for play purposes only for research, basically. And every time I use it, I'll show you how you can backtrack, go back to the clean out all your track and go back to the original image that was. And I have another VPN provider here. All right, I was using NordVPN on one of them, and I'm using private internet access, and we're out of Washington, D.C. But if I go here, you can, pick your city, mostly around the world, many different options. If nothing else, even if you don't want to access to the dark web, I recommend you get VPN and get a paid one, get a good one. It's fairly cost effective, and it's just going to mask your IP. It's going to make it for people much more difficult to track it back to you.
Hey, let me add something on that, Barbara.
So, yeah.
So if you notice when he pulled up his VPN, he could pick a city or pick a country for the exit node. This is important. A lot of the free VPNs you can get and you can download, they work. Many of them work fine. The issue becomes getting locked out by service providers or challenged, right? Having Google challenge you or something like that, just on everyday, using a VPN to protect your IP address, and then Google doesn't recognize it. And if you pay for a VPN, you generally get choices where you want the end node to be. So to keep from getting challenged, if you're in the United States, you might pick one that's in the United States. If you travel to Germany, you pick one somewhere in the region, and that reduces the probability of getting challenged significantly.
Perfect. So I think where did we start? Freenet first? Doesn't really matter. So this one is my Freenet site. I'm just gonna make it a little bit bigger. So this is what it looks like. Regular browser with a bunch of different information. Most of this information, maybe some of it you can find on the surface web, but you have to be able to use some Google hacking or Google dorking. Those are used interchangeably to really pinpoint the actual info that you're looking for. Whether you're targeting or researching. Most of mine is academic, so when I'm looking for that, I would like to use different ways of searching, so I don't get million results, more of 100, so I can easily filter through. So this is a free net site. This is a landing page that you're going to land, and these are different links that's going to give you information. So if you're new to this, you're encouraged, especially in academia, go ahead and start, but learn about it first. Go to YouTube, watch a video, look up some documents. There's tons of documents out there on this. So don't go just, download and start doing things because you could get yourself hurt. So hurt in terms of emotionally, because if you end up with the wrong person, and if they're just like, keep nagging you on, it's not going to be that good, right? Or if your computer is compromised, they can introduce malicious software and so on. So earlier, so this Enzo's index, this is the one that I clicked on. Since we are using multiple VPNs, or I'm using multiple VPNs here, the network is going to be a little bit slower, even though I have a really fast internet. So landing page, if I would have clicked on this, that would bring up this other page that you can see what kind of content is there. So on the right side, these are like different tags for different content that you can get. A lot of publications, messaging stuff, indexes, infos, some what was it? some pornography and so on. So anything that's deemed bad on the surface web, or people are trying to do it, but do it without them getting compromised, they usually put it over here. So yeah, I'm not going to click again. And even though it says, say, if I'm looking for develop, Freenet dev, if I click on it, if it happens to be child pornography, based on the laws and stuff, I'm part of that investigation. So really think about what you're clicking on. Think through if that's what you need, right? And then, plan of action, then you go about it. Warren, you want to add anything on this?
Nope, you're good. This one.
Okay, so I'm going to minimize that one. I'm going to go to the other one. So this is Invisible Internet project that we talked about earlier. This is the landing page. Nice dashboard, right? So I'll give you a second to take a look at see what you can see over here. And again, I'm not going to engage today. Maybe later on we'll do another talk. We'll do a deep dive on one of these topics. So as you can see, there's all sorts of stuff. There's some anonymous stuff. There's just build stuff. There are wikis. You can get an IP2 email, right? That's going to work only on this router, plugins, and so on. So this is another example, IP2. Warren, anything on this one?
Nope, you're doing great.
Okay, so let's do, so Tor Browser, one of the rules are you never maximize. So I'm just gonna, this is for training purposes. Obviously, we want to create awareness around this, but I'm still gonna keep it smaller as such. So let's tell them a story. Do you want to go first?
Sure.
How about this one? Take this one.
This is one of my favorite sites, and we were looking for and hunting one time for a particular group of people that were, we believe, were moving guns and supporting some rebels. And over the course of time, I stumbled across this particular site. It's a .onion site, so it's a site that's actually created within the Tor network. And the way this, for those of you who don't know, the way this generally works, there's a process, and you can actually Google it, and it will give you the process for creating an onion site. And this is different than just having a email address or something like that. You're actually creating a chat site and a network within the Tor network, so people can find you. Basically, you're putting up a storefront. So this particular one is a weapons site that, as you get in, you have to you have to know what the URL is, or the address. All the numbers at the top and the .onion in the address bar. You have to know where to go. How do people know where to go? So there's marketing, just like there's marketing on Google. There's marketing on the dark web, and through the various chat rooms, the hacker forums, the jihadi forums. They trade information and addresses, so they know where to go to buy certain things. This particular site, you can, I like it because it's very creative. You can buy all manner of weapons, projectiles, missiles, explosives, and they will ship it to you, and concealments, or in other words, they give some examples. As you go through their site, you go deeper and deeper into the site. They'll give you options of concealments. So they may send you the explosives via FedEx inside of a computer hard drive, or something like that. It's a well thought out website. It is a legitimate website. The problem is, as this had nothing to do with what I was doing, but I was interested. You reach a point where you can't find any more information out, and because of the anonymity of Tor. So I can go to that site for a while, that URL, look and see what explosives cost, and I may wake up tomorrow and go to that site and it has evaporated. And this is how many of the sites continue to stay in business, if you will, is they tear down the chat room or the URL and then stand up a new one. And it can go on and on and on indefinitely based on their behavior. And then their core customers are notified through various chat rooms, through various encrypted applications, that the store has moved.
Great. Let's see, which one do I want to do? So I'll tell you a story as well. During Cyber Awareness Month a few months ago, I wanted to do a lunch and learn for our team at work. As I thought about what to do, I asked people, hey, what should I look at? So I started digging through these sites for PII type of data so I can use as example. So I found a few here and there, but it wasn't enough, right? And there's another tool that we will show you later on that you can automate most of this and get it. So I came across one example is a lot of PayPal accounts. I'm talking about hundreds of accounts. So I could see people's names, addresses, mostly in DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Names, addresses, most of the credit card information, phone numbers. So all your financial data. So imagine you went to a bank and opened an account. What kind of information they asked, I had that visible. That was just one example. It was really eye-opening as well. Finding one or two here and there is one thing, but then finding, you know, 500, lines just in a small dump is a lot, and 500 just, just a small sample. And if you keep digging for it, you can get to millions and all sorts of information out there. So this is another site for fake IDs, right? So this one is trying to sell U.S. citizenships, and their price is about $1,000. So that's another example. Black market, another one. So it seems like marijuana. I'm not sure what these are. And look at the languages, right? There are all sorts of languages here. So this happens, it looks like Russian here. This one was English, obviously. And then, based on my research, I have come across Farsi, Chinese, and those are the main ones out there, depending on what you're looking at and what you end up with. So another example, rent a hacker. These things exist. Again, I have not engaged them, but the site is there. That's what they're. It's like a renting a car, and they will tell you what kind of pricing and what are you gonna get, what kind of skill set you're gonna get. Uh, let's see. Warren, you want to take this one?
Which one is this? Oh, this
Dark
is yeah.
matter
This is
assassination services.
yeah. This is always a good one. They'll basically goes back to the dirty deeds done dirt cheap kind of thing, kidnapping, killing, and all of that sort of thing. There are hundreds of these dark websites like this. One thing that we do need to add is a lot of the sites that offer services like this are sites that are selling weapons or drugs, um, are legitimate in terms of they do have the material to sell you and get to you. The principal issue is many of these sites are um, basically scams. And they want you to transfer Bitcoin or a certain amount of money as a down payment or a deposit. The problem is it's hard to tell which ones are which, and so there's a lot of trust that goes on when working in the dark web like this. Now, particularly the assassination sites like this one, and the anything to do with human trafficking or child pornography is heavily targeted by law enforcement. Um, so those sites, and one thing, if you ever just piddle around in Tor and you decide to go to some of these sites, this is one reason Barbara's talking about engagement. You can look, but you should never engage because a lot of these sites are being monitored, and also you have the opportunity to see things you can't unsee.
Great. And 0 days we talked about. I'm just going to show you. So that's another example. Anything else should we add for this before I go into some of the recorded future stuff?
No, that's good.
Okay, awesome. So let me get out of here. I'm gonna go back to that. Okay, so next one. So we talked about, how you can do it manually, right? Different gateways that you can get to it, whether it's Freenet, ZeroNet, Tor, or Invisible Internet Project samples. However, there are tools such as this one. This is by Recorded Future. Neither of us work for them, but I love their product. First, I have used it for research purposes. It's amazing, and it automates all of it. And I think, in my opinion, they're one of the best threat intelligence tool for cybersecurity, I'd say, in the world. They have a few newsletter that you can subscribe to. I'm subscribed to it, and the classes that I teach, I encourage my students to do it because it's really simple. It's just one pager. It's going to give you a lot of good information. Who the threat actors are, who are the top 5 IPs that bad actors, or who's talking about what, whether it's cyber or something else. So you get a lot of good intel, and you get it for free through their newsletter in one place. So most of my mornings start off, reading the Recorded Futures free threat intelligence newsletter. So they have blogs as well. Since I have access to the tool and I use it for school through my threat intelligence course, as well as secure human behaviors course that Warren and I created based on the concepts on his book for Nova. So let me see if I think I had it up. So just to give you a perspective, all the things that we talked about, it can be filtered, first scraped and then filtered and then visualized as you see on your screen now. Right. So most of the time, if you're looking at an enterprise level, there's a lot of information, that big data thing that people talk about, but most don't know what to do about it. Companies as such, using artificial intelligence, machine learning, they have made it easier. Right. As a human cyber analyst, I rather look at this than, jump around multiple different URLs. And remember, surface web was about 4% roughly, and 96% would have been the deep in the dark. Imagine how many sites are there, and doing it manually would not work. So this is just a glimpse of, this can be automated, and if you have the capability. Warren, anything for this part? Warren, you still there? Okay. Can
I,
anyone hear me?
I was on mute.
Oh, you're still there.
Yep, I'm
Okay,
still here.
got it. Do
Yeah,
you do
sorry.
you want to add anything?
Nope, I'm good. There's good coverage.
Okay. Got it. So perfect. So that's that. So next steps. We are researchers, and we're going to continue to research this area. And we're working on a book. There's something along the line of all-in-one guide to deep and dark web. Tackle it from the behavioral aspects of it, manage attribute networks, and as well as talk about many different engines that can take you to the darkest corners of the web, and how to navigate and what to look for type. Um, and part of that book is going to be a human behavior analysis for the surface, deep, and the dark. Each one is different. We don't encourage you to secure all your valuables the same way, so risk management comes into play. So think about what's the most valuable, start with those. More gates for those than something that you wouldn't care if someone takes it. There's no value to it. Warren, anything for this one?
Nope, we
Okay.
have some questions.
Okay, so we'll get to the question. So this is our contact information. That's Warren's, and that's my school email. Feel free to contact us. Anything about the deep and dark web, secure human behavior, or if you're interested in some of the research that we are into, deep in the dark web, a lot of things with human aspects of cybersecurity. And we are co-creating another course, hopefully to be offered at one of the schools, colleges, and universities here on proactive threat intelligence using the deep and dark web. Earlier, at the beginning of the conversation, I stated that academia, I'm part of it, right? I'm part of the problem, but I'm trying to be part of the solution as well, does not do enough to talk about these parts. There's a lot of great information out here, and if we get our students ready from day one, specifically on cyber programs, talking about this, shedding light on and making sure that they're aware they're going to be better cyber folks as they grow and mature. So I'm going to minimize this side. I'm going to go back to Adobe Connect so we can answer questions. Okay, only if I knew how to do this. There you go. Okay, where are the questions?
Upper right corner. Question box.
All right, do you want to read them? I
Okay,
can
sure.
see what you're looking
So
at.
Sugar Bear asks, can someone intercept your traffic en route to the VPN tunnel?
Okay, Sugar Bear. That sounds like a really awesome call sign for someone. Hi, Sugar Bear. Do you want to try to answer
Sure.
that?
So the way the VPN works is it's a software resident on your computer or your phone. So the idea is it's in effect creating a private network with for you to go out and interact with the world. So it creates a um, secure network to an IP address, as you saw on Barbour's computer, to a secure IP address, where from that address you go out into the wild and search the internet and do what you need to do, right? Um, so the only way to really intercept it and break it, because once the data enters the tunnel, it's encrypted. Um, the only really way to break it is to be able to get to the data on the computer or phone before you transmit it. So that would require some sort of cyber implant on the computer or phone. Hope that helps.
Great. So I'm using two different providers. Why? Redundancy, right? And I'm looking at it from an availability and redundancy perspective as well, and also security. If one of them fails, I have the second one ready to go. Right. So especially if you travel, you probably want to have primary backup. If you don't, get used to doing that and goes to plan of action. And I just use two different ones, two different companies behind it, two different servers, and so on. So these are again multiple gates, right? If people like Warren for his previous job, if he's hunting for someone or something, can he still find you? Most likely yes, but it might take him months and months longer because we have all these gates, right? Every time you hop around, that's just extra work for, hunters out there.
The next
All right.
question is from Carlos Blanco. Can
Okay.
two-factor authentication get rid of being challenged by the service providers such as Google?
That's an interesting question. So two-factor authentication is meant for an extra gate, so that if one of your credentials are compromised without having the second one, people should not be able to get into your account. Right. I don't know how the word challenge is used for that. This is really an authentication thing. That's why people put it. Again, imagine using a username, password, and a token, right? Whether soft or hard token. Username, password, something that you have. A lot of people in the government have those. What are they called? PIV cards or CAC cards with a chip in them. So you have to have. So it's really authentication to give you better security that way. What we're trying to do with that is that if one of the factors are compromised, the adversary should not be able to get to your information without the second one.
Let me add to that. So,
Yeah.
with regards specific to the question, so when I was talking earlier about being challenged, um, from that standpoint, the two-factor authentication is what Google is imposing on you, not what Barbour just described. So when we start setting up all of our accounts nowadays, and we choose to check the box for two-factor authentication, it does exactly what Barbour just said, and it provides another gate to protect your data. In the terms of the question and what I was talking about, so when you sign on to your Google account, you put name and password in, and usually that's fine. If when you first set up your Google account, you put in a name and password, it'll send you a text message, and you'll have to enter the number or a capture code in order to be able to certify your Gmail. But if you are being caught transmitting through proxy servers or like Tor or something like that, what they will do is they will not only send you a text message and ask you to enter the code, but they will also do some other or second factor authentication that's random and separate. They may send you a picture, because this just happened to me last week. they may send you a picture, and you have to then tell them in a text message what the picture is. So they may send you a picture of a bus, and then a school bus, and then you have to send them a text message that says school bus. So in terms of that, there's no really getting around it with the service provider, because once you get caught cheating the system, so to speak, they're going to do something like that to you.
Awesome.
And
So,
we have
let's
another
see.
question, last question, I think. What's the worst thing that could occur by maximizing your screen? I think, yeah,
Interesting
I think
one.
in like the Tor browser.
Yeah, so every time you visit a site, the server is looking for user agent. That's the browser that you're using. So it will tell you everything about the fingerprint of your browser, what kind of browser it is. So for Tor, it's Firefox based. You can do that, and what kind of browser you're using, where you're coming from, and so on. And then based on your screen size, it could be zeroed into the actual computer you're using. Right. So browser information, fingerprinting, just look up how to fingerprint user agents on Google. You'll find a lot of information. So that's just one piece, right? And you'll take what kind of computer you're using, where the IP address is coming from, and you're going to keep on digging deeper until you get to that person that's sitting behind that computer. So if you keep it by default, it's not going to tell them a whole lot. With that, the server will, that you're visiting, would it still know? Yeah, it will know it as Tor without giving a lot more information on it.
Cool.
Warren, did I get
Yep,
that right?
that's good.
Okay, so there's one from Ed. Um, like the dashboard, how does one get that? Are you talking about the recorded future dashboard or invisible inner project? Most likely recorded future because probably that was one of the cooler ones up here. Okay, so yeah, so that one, so it's a company, right? I got it because I do a lot of research on secure human behavior deep in the dark web. I asked them, and they gave my school a license, right? For research purposes, I got it, and for work, I have a lot of friends. They work at various places. They have a paid version of it, so it costs, but it's meant for enterprises and researchers. So there's a cost associated with it, but I got it through school for research. The least that you can do is subscribe to their newsletter, and they also have annual conference, Recorded Future User Network, which is amazing. You see a lot of threat intelligence folks from different industry, private, public, and academia get together and present on really, groundbreaking research.
Cool.
So John has another one. How often does the dark web have legitimate products like usual and deep web?
Say that again, Pablo.
How often does the dark web have legitimate products like usual and deep web?
Um,
So we talked about guns and drugs and whatnot, but how often can you buy candy there?
oh, yeah, you go to Amazon to do that. So
Yeah.
what you would do is there may be a little bit of a misconception here, real quick. So when you go to the dark, let's say you use Tor, you go to the dark web to buy guns, you're going to a very specific onion site, .onion site that somebody set up to buy guns. Um, but if you want to just search the web anonymously and order something from Google, or from Amazon, so big Amazon doesn't necessarily know where you are physically sitting, or just because you just don't want the whole world to know, that where your exact house is, and you have something shipped to a post office box. People use Tor all the time for very legitimate purposes of nothing more than protecting their anonymity so they can go out and shop or search in the wild. For example, if you're a student and you're doing a research paper on a controversial cultural topic, I don't know, say white supremacy, yeah, but you're doing a research paper, you might not want to be surfing the surface web publicly and going to white supremacist sites from your home computer. So because you don't want to be associated with that. So what you would do is you would open Tor, then you would go do the research through Tor to protect yourself. So there are tons of legitimate things to do on the dark web but most of the actual storefronts or sites, if you will, that sell things are one of two things: illicit materials that are really there, or law enforcement who are setting up honeypots to capture people.
Great. So can we take a few more? Is that okay? So it says if a malicious person were to shop for citizenship, drugs, etc., couldn't it also be law enforcement? Short answer is yes. That's why we talked about managing attribution. That's why we talked about secure human behavior and plan of action. Yeah, if you are looking for that type of stuff, the recommendation is don't. Right? It could be anything. Not only citizenship. It could all those drugs and all those guns could be a front for something else. And going back to John's question, a lot of people put, a lot of everyday material, but behind that is something that they're actually trying to push out there. So if we wanted to analyze the content of various dark web, how would someone obtain list of onion sites? Okay, I think that goes with, there was another question from Linda. So yeah, so I can give you one URL that you can read for research purposes, which is on OpenNet. I think I had that one up too. Let me use this browser. All right, so here's deep.web.com, amazing site. I went to this really awesome training not too long ago, and this was one of the first things that we learned there. So this is news about the deep and the dark web, and you can follow it. It's on the internet surface web. So go through most reads, go through these documents, really learn before you start doing a deep dive, especially if you're going into a new. Yeah, it's fun and sexy, but then you don't want to get in trouble, right? So do the right thing before you start using that. And then to answer your questions, market lists available. I guess this is going to answer Linda's question. How can I learn more? This is a really good site. Well, Google Dork your way through to some user guides for the deep and the dark web. Download Tor Browser. That's the easiest one. And look at the configuration. Look at how it's set up. For different sites, these are the markets that are available. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. Dream Market. So when you go here, so that was a .com website, right? That's a surface web. That's not going to work on a dark web. But if you go here, Dream Market, it will give you that onion address. So you would copy and paste this on your browser, a Tor browser, to access this site. So this is a good resource. YouTube is amazing. I use it all the time, and just to learn stuff and stay current with different materials. So you would take that, paste it here, enter, see what's going to come up.
That's
Okay,
the other thing you should know when you're doing this. When you put something in like that and you say we're going to see what comes up, you never know. You're never 100% sure what may come up.
exactly. So that's why it's important. You don't know what's behind that label. And that's why I didn't want to, click on stuff and then next thing you know is, yeah, that's something that's not intended. And your intent matters as well. Okay, let me go back here. Any other questions? Well, if you really want to learn, contact us. Depending on what do you do, and if you're in academia, I have no problem helping you. Maybe you can do research on me, but contact so we can share information that way, if appropriate.
Yeah, and as for myself, I still work in the community, both as a consultant and for a company. So I'm always available to do different talks or chit chat, especially with government folks that are trying to either learn more about this stuff or execute against some of this stuff.
So Can we do one last one?
Sure,
I guess.
as long as everybody stays in the chat room.
Okay, yeah. Do government agencies have site traps in the dark web or catch bad guys? I don't know the answer, so always assume that someone is watching you. Right? If you go into it, assuming that someone is watching you, then you will have better action. So same thing with the surface web. Just because it's the surface web doesn't mean that you can do anything and everything. You might be able to, but it could also get in trouble whether it's legal or something else. Again, secure behavior, critical thinking, and plan of action, right? Always assume, if you assume from the beginning, that this is going back to some of the stuff that I teach from Warren's book. If you assume from the beginning that you're compromised, you will have a better plan, right? So that would be my answer. Heard of the book titled Messaging with the Enemy?
Messing with the enemy.
I have not. Warren, have
No,
you?
I have not.
Messing with the Enemy. No, but I will check that out. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, can you talk about ShowThen and other similar tools? Sure. I can start, and then Warren, please add. So ShowThen is, I guess, simplest way I would describe it as a Google for internet-connected devices, right? So imagine you go to Google and search for your favorite, keyword, or you're looking for someone's address or how to do something, right? You are talking to the machine, and the machine is doing its job. That's part of the machine learning, and will throw back an answer. When you go to showthen.io, you can see, as a matter of fact, I can take you and show you. This is a good question. So when you're researching and such, I'll just use Firefox for this one. Let's see. So this is like wealth of information on connected devices. This is what it looks like. Right, and you can search for a device based on manufacturer or the model number, and will throw out a lot of good information. So for the cyber folks, whether students or professionals, often we hear about this researcher found a exposed server on Shodan and either stole the material or informed the people that the server was there. So that's what people are doing here. You can go there, it will tell you port numbers, it will tell you a wealth of information about the device that you're looking at. So really good resource, great resource, utilize it. And there's an API available. And with free version, you can do quite a bit, but if you get the paid version, you will have access to even more data that you can play with. And imagine Shodan along with what are some other tools? Yeah, so Shodan is a good one. Let's just stick with that question. Warren, did you have anything for
No,
Shodan?
I love it.
All right, yeah, so Shodan, yeah, I was going for MultiGo. Say if you're doing network analysis, another example, doing research, I find this person that's trying to sell this zero-day exploit, since I'm a cybersecurity professional, right? I find that, what else can I find about that person? You can use MultiGo to do social network analysis and find their contacts and map it out and how people are connected and what their capabilities are, depending on how many hops you're going to go. Say if I find Warren and Warren is connected to, person X, okay, now I have a lot with Warren, and then go to person X and see what their connections are. So there are many different ways you can take this. It's amazing. That's why I love cybersecurity. I love teaching it. It's a lifestyle. Uh, you know, Unlimited amount of resources and unlimited ways that you can take this.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Again, here's our contact information. Let me put that slide back up. If there aren't any questions, we appreciate it, and stay in
Thank you for
touch.
your time.
Thank you both very much. This